So hello, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to NVN London, and importantly, as the title of this video would suggest, welcome to one of the most beautifully spec'd Koenigsegg Regeras I think I've ever laid eyes on. Now this isn't just any Koenigsegg Regera, this just so happens to be my business partner's new car. So, first of all, congratulations. Now, I am truly honored because I had a hand in the design of this car. The color theme, the extras, the feel, the details, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today, is run you through nose to tail of all of the artisan craft that has gone into this wonderful car. Now, this has been over 2 years in the making. It's been a long time, and this isn't the kind of car that you just sort of press order and they churn one out and off it rolls. There's a lot of love backwards and forwardsing, a big collaborative effort with Christian and Haldora and the team in Sweden, and of course my partner, his family and friends, to create something that is much more than just a car. This has had so much love and time and attention in it that I have no hesitation in saying that this is practically already a member of his family. So without further ado, let's show you the very special details of this very special Koenigsegg Regera. Now honestly, when the order was placed for this car, I really wasn't sure that I'd ever be able to share it with you. Here we are, stood in front of what is almost certainly one of the last Koenigsegg Regeras to roll off the production line. As we record this right now, I think Regera production is now complete. Only 80 of these will be made worldwide, and it's incredible to be able to share this one with you today. So let's start with the overall color theme. We've got 3 primary colors. We've got blue, black, and orange. First of all, let's start off with the majority of the color, which is this deep, rich, heavy, metallic fleck navy blue. Now, interestingly, the internal color from Koenigsegg is sky blue. My interpretation of sky blue is actually quite a bit lighter, but regardless, that's the internal name for this. And when you get up close to it, it does have a beautiful metallic fleck in it. And then we have these orange accents. Now, these aren't just a flat paint, these are a pearlescent highlight, and the paint color of this is called Orange Tang, and the idea of that is to tie in with the volcano orange leather interior. And one of the inspirations when we first started to come up with the color theme of this was the luxury brand Hermes. That's a very similar color theme, particularly with the orange here. And I think the importance of that is you can think of this much more of a sort of luxury Grand Tourer versus the historical Koenigsegg's like the Agera RS, etc., which are really hardcore. This inside, which you'll see in a minute, is absolutely gorgeous. It's much more of a luxury Grand Tourer. Yeah, I just think this sort of Pantone, these shades really suit it. And then we have the third color. It might look black, but it's actually exposed carbon fiber. Now, every body panel on this car is carbon, including the tub itself. And once we've gone around and done the walk and talk, we'll introduce you to the interior and find out how all of that ties in. But before we dive into the specifics of this specification, I think it would only be right to highlight the overview of a Koenigsegg Regera. Now, if you're interested in a real in-depth first drive, there is a link in the description below. But just as a recap, the car is around about 1,800 horsepower. You heard that right, 1,800 horsepower. One of the most unique attributes of this car is that it has one gear, or should I say it has a direct drive system. It's called KDD, which is an abbreviation of Koenigsegg Direct Drive. And it is a 5-litre turbocharged V8 hybrid. But it's not just a mild hybrid, this is a really substantial, very complex hybrid system. You see, the 5-litre turbocharged V8 generates around about 1,000 horsepower. And as far as engines go, while it is disproportionately powerful, that's quite a conventional component of the car. Where it really gets trick is the hybrid unit. You see, on the direct drive, which is a single gear, is one electric motor directly on the drive shaft, and then there's 2 additional electric motors on both rear wheels, and combined with the engine power, that creates around about 1,800 horsepower. However, 1,800 horsepower isn't actually translated to the floor. The way that the hybrid interacts with the conventional internal combustion engine and translates that power to the road, it ultimately ends up just over 1,500 horsepower, which, if you contextualize this for a second, the car weighs similar to your average BMW 3 Series at just over 1,500 kilograms with an actual output of 1,500 horsepower. So it basically has a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, which translates to absolutely bonkers speed. The feeling of this, it's such a unique sensation because it is a direct drive, single gear. You can think of it as a very posh CVT system, but you can also think of it as only having final drive. So imagine this car only having 7th gear. That's how it can go from 0 all the way to over 250 miles an hour on 1 gear, but it has a CVT style transmission system. It's very trick indeed. Once again, if you want to know how that feels like to drive, link in the description below. But first, I think we should get on with the spec of this car, and I reckon we should start from the front and then work our way to the back and introduce you to the color palette and why it's quite suitable to this genre of car. Okay, for the benefit of the OCD in all of us, let's talk symmetry. So one of the signature features of Koenigsegg is the central placement of the windscreen wiper. Now, where the artisan craft here comes is how beautifully matched the direction of the carbon fiber weave is across the entire car. But it doesn't stop there. You see this orange tang line here, which has a beautifully tight taper towards the very edge here, matches absolutely perfectly with how each direction of this weave lines up down the bonnet line here, but importantly also matches up perfectly with the central windscreen wiper there. So any photographers out there who've got the major OCD that like to get everything lined up, if you get one of those shots where you can line it up with the white line in the road, matching this, matching that, it's going to be great. But really, this is all about the attention to detail. It is mind-blowing stuff. Also, before we hop anywhere else, this badge here, which just so happens to be finished in a smoked chrome effect, happens to also double up as the front-facing parking camera. Take my word for it. Check it out. Now, in the world of automotive, there are typically 2 types of carbon fiber finish. There's the gloss and there's the matte. But in the world of Koenigsegg, there is polished carbon fiber. And you may be thinking, what is that? How do you polish carbon? Well, it's the most phenomenal feature. It retains a matte finish, but it has this almost chromatic feel about it. It's the most incredible finish where a satin piece of carbon has a very metallic shine to it. I don't know how long it takes Koenigsegg to do that, but it's all done by hand, and they polish each bit of carbon which has been optionally specified to be polished carbon fiber. So this here, for example, is polished carbon versus this here, which is gloss carbon, not to be confused with matte carbon, and it really does give a very distinct metallic finish to something which doesn't have a metallic finish. Brings me on to the headlight clusters here. Now inside we also have polished carbon, but all of the headlight hardware has also been matched with the badge and the sort of reflective finish that you get off polished carbon, and it's got this deep smoked, almost titanium feel to it. Now, one of the signature features of Regera headlights is that they've got this sort of extraction fan in there, which I think is for both cooling but also to reduce the chance of any humidity buildup inside the light cluster. And then embedded within the polished carbon headlamp cluster is LED daytime running lights, which are referred to as zodiac clusters because they create a sort of constellation effect within the headlight unit. Yeah, that's just the detail for the headlight. Imagine what we're going to show you across this amazing machine. Okay, there's a lot to talk about in this region alone. Wheels, tires, brakes, calipers, and gold. Bear with me. So first of all, let's talk about the tires, which are shod on the most incredible wheels. You've got to stay to the end of this video. The facts are just bonkers. So Michelin has been an exclusive tire partner of Koenigsegg since day one. It's important to mention that because Koenigsegg historically have been very good at breaking world records. That's acceleration times, deceleration times, top speed times, and it's important because all of this phenomenal aerodynamics and tech goes through the single piece of contact patch, which is the rubber, and Koenigsegg and Michelin have always worked very closely to get the most performance out of their car possible. Now, these Michelin Cup 2s are on a carbon fiber air core wheel. Now, the significance of these is not only do they look incredibly sexy, but these are a single piece hollow carbon fiber wheel. They were the first to do it in the world back in 2012. The significance of it is incredible weight savings, over 20 kilograms of weight saving versus a standard wheel. The intricacy of them is insane. There are different versions of it. This is known internally as the biohazard wheel, hence the shape of the spokes. And this also, as you guessed it, is a polished carbon fiber finish. Again, camera not doing it justice. One thing that we've done here at NVN London, and I believe it's a world first, certainly on a Koenigsegg Regera anyway, is templating paint protection film to fit the carbon fiber wheel, the carbon fiber spokes. The reason being, well, let's just say you don't want to scratch one of these. And such is the aerodynamics on hypercars, it's not uncommon for the aero, which keeps the air close to the side of the car, to whip pebbles and stones around and actually end up scratching your wheels or building up dirt on the inside if you find yourself on a dusty road. So paint protection film on the carbon fiber wheels is a very nice touch. Now then, calipers and brakes. The significance of these is Koenigsegg actually manufacture their own brakes in-house. May not seem like a big deal, but it is a very big deal. And to have your own Koenigsegg designed and made brakes on a Regera is very cool indeed. And then the last detail, which I mentioned, was gold. Now you can't see it here, but in a minute we'll splice in some sexy B-roll. On the back section, the rear hub of this carbon fiber wheel is a gold-plated hub. The reason for that is for heat shielding, to protect the amount of heat that's generated off these Koenigsegg carbon fiber discs on the back of this carbon fiber wheel to keep them crispy, or not too crispy, as the case would be. All right, so this is Reese. Here's our PPF template ninja. Now, Reese, I know you've applied some templates to some pretty serious stuff in the past. We've had some amazing cars through the doors.
We have.
But have you ever done a carbon fiber wheel before?
Not quite like this one.
Right, okay.
So, so this one was quite a job because obviously there's no template of this at standard, so we had to make it completely bespoke.
Yeah.
Now, the trouble I had with these alloys is that you'd think that these being the 20.5 inch at the front, 21.5 inch at the rear, you think you just select the whole lot and just scale it down.
Right.
It's not like that at all. So basically,
of course it isn't. Why would it be easy?
Exactly, right? So basically the wall thickness of here is going to be 35 mil, whereas at the back it's 55 mil.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a 30% reduction.
So same shape, but different scale.
Exactly, yeah. So you think, oh, okay, you just scale it back 30%.
Yeah.
Totally not the case at all.
Right.
Because at the back, it just the diameter of the wheel scales down by 5%, so you can't kind of factor all of that into one scale.
Right.
So they actually had to be made separately. Roughly 15 pieces per alloy.
Okay.
And that's because we just really want to get in where the high impact areas are going to be.
Yep.
So what we've had to do here is we've had to take basically a section of the wheel where it rotates in its repetitive pattern. And so we've made space here for, like, for example, like the air valve, for example, starts to cut out. So there's no cutting on the car.
Yeah, wow.
And then you've got all the small inlet pieces that go around the outside too.
It's intricate, isn't it?
It's involved, yeah.
Super cool. Well, that's awesome, dude. Top work. Thanks for showing us around.
No worries.
Okay, so let's continue on the aero story around the rear of the car. So these are part of the optional extra aero pack, these winglets, for want of a better word. But the actual wing itself is very trick indeed. Not only is it active, it pivots and moves based on what the car is doing under heavy acceleration to reduce drag, or heavy braking to increase drag to help stability under higher braking speeds. But the really cool thing is that this entire wing completely recesses and sits flush with the back of the car. It's really cool to see it because when it's up or down, it completely changes the way that this car looks and feels. Okay, let's talk diffusers and exhaust, but not before I point out further smoked anodizing on the Koenigsegg logo here, tying it all in with the rest of the trim on the car. Now then, you would be forgiven for thinking that that is the exhaust. And while it is an exhaust, it's not the exhaust. You see, this here is an exhaust to extract heat from the hybrid unit. It is in fact these things here that are neatly blended into the shape of the diffuser. Koenigsegg teamed up with titanium exhaust specialist Akrapovic to make a very bespoke system. Now, not only is it clever because it fits in with the design of the diffuser, it's almost hidden. If it wasn't pointed out to you, you might not at first notice it. But if you're familiar with cars of the 20s, 30s, 40s, you might have noticed that this is also reminiscent of the fishtail exhaust tips that used to grace those cars. So weirdly, despite the fact that this car is such a futuristic, forward-thinking car, I do quite like the aesthetic nod to cars of the past. Very cool indeed. And this, as I mentioned, is the heat extractor for the hybrid unit. Now, on the topic of hybrid units, it's definitely not evident at first, but this car has an 800-volt architecture. This was the first production car to ever include an 800-volt charging system. The reason that Koenigsegg used it is not just for rapid charging, but 800-volt architecture allows for a lighter weight hybrid system. You can use thinner wires, for example. Generally using it, benefits, less weight, more power. Music to any petrol head's ears, and that's what this car is all about. Disproportionate power to weight ratio. So not only was it groundbreaking in terms of charging tech, but also in terms of lightweight architecture for the use of a hybrid drivetrain in a hypercar. Now, in order to plug this car in, there's something really trick here. Just behind the number plate holder, which also just so happens to be polished carbon, which is incredible in itself, is the hybrid charging unit. This whole area here articulates, and this is where you plug your car in should you be charging it wherever you stop. It's a really nice detail. So, even though the ethos of the car is more of a luxury grand tourer, the week that we filmed this, it just so happens that the Koenigsegg Regera beat a lap time currently held by the McLaren Senna at the Ring Knutstorp by a second in Sweden. Swedish refer to it as like a mini Nürburgring. So if there was anything to say that this thing's hella fast, it's faster than a Senna, which is berserk. And while that's all very nice, and while 250 mile an hour is very nice, and 0 to 60 in around about 2.7 seconds is very nice, its real party trick is the robotization of every single body panel of the car. Okay, so now it has run through its party trick. Let's get to the business end of the Regera, which is of course the engine bay. Now in here, first of all, let's start off with the now iconic triplex suspension, which is this incredible unit you've got here. Effectively what this is a third damper, and that's designed to reduce squat, allowing more contact patch more consistently with these Michelin Cup 2 tyres. That is one of the contributing factors to A, why the car rides so well, but B, why it can get such phenomenal accelerative figures, because it is optimized to work with the physics of the car to maintain as much traction through these tyres at all time. Now then, the uniqueness, as it were, of this car is the more conventional internal combustion engine over here, twin turbocharged 5-litre V8, mated with the hybrid drivetrain over here. Now this section here is batteries. This is a very fancy polished carbon fiber air intake system, and this here is actually the cooling for the hybrid system, which once again feeds through down to the hybrid exhaust down there to help extract heat. But the engine bay now of a Koenigsegg is one of the most iconic and the sexiest places to stare at in the automotive industry. It's so beautiful. What is unique about this car, if you follow me around here, is in order to fill up the Regera with fuel, there is no conventional fuel filler cap on the external of the body. So when you pull up at a petrol station, that opens. Can you imagine the kind of theatre and attraction this generates? Just being in the vicinity of other humans with this thing is enough for them to be magnetized to it. But as soon as you press that button, this entire carbon clamshell ejects up just to fill up your car with fuel. That's what this car is all about. And almost every component made by Koenigsegg has either the Koenigsegg name on it or the Koenigsegg shield. Almost everything. You can look at a component, if it's made by Koenigsegg, which the majority of components these days are made in-house, it will have some sort of Koenigsegg shield stamp name on it. Look, everywhere you look, these little braces here, these clips for when the clam recesses down, the carbon battery housing here. Koenigsegg triplex suspension, the airbox even has as beautiful a badge on it on the airbox as it does on the very front of the car. This is the detail of this thing. It is just stunning. Anyway, let's walk around to the front, because this is where this car for me is almost two cars in one, because while there is somewhat of a boot in here, the main purpose of this is to accommodate the roof. Yes, that's right. You can remove the roof from this car and store it in the front. Before we do, I want to point you out some more detail. Check out this thing here. Nice little bag clad in Alcantara. Look at this as well. A polished carbon dish for your central locking wheel nut release system, sir. And if I just show you this, this again is the sort of thing that you would expect from this brand, the kind of detail you get from the utility to unlock your wheels with. Look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. I mean, the way that fits together there, it's addictive. I mean, look, when was the last time you saw something that beautiful to unlock your wheels? Sensational thing. Okay, this is the part where I introduce you to the carbon fiber sink that comes with every Koenigsegg Regera. You heard me right. You see this section here? This is a drainage tray, carbon fiber drainage sink, which has a hole in it right there, which channels to these two pipes here. Now, as part of that, in order to remove the roof and insert it into the roof storage section, you have to remove the pipes like so. And this is a pretty standard practice on all Koenigsegg's, where you can insert the roof in the front. Now, you may be thinking, what if it rains? Well, the theory is if you've got the roof off, it's not raining. But if it does, well, you're going to get wet. Okay, so there are 5 clips in here to remove the roof. Up here on this line here, 2, 3, and then 2 behind me, 4, and 5. And then we can remove the roof, slot it in the front, and expose this gorgeous interior. Okay, so it does have a piece of glass in the middle, but the rest of it's made from carbon fiber. So it is designed to do it on your own, and you can store it away like so in your polished carbon cave. And check this out. If you come down here, these little lines there, all 3 of those have to line up, and then you know it's centralized and in place and good to lock down. And look how beautiful it is. Got the quilted leather lining in the roof. And look how well it fits. It is gorgeous. And now, behold, an entirely transformed machine. I'm sure you'll agree, with the roof off, this thing completely, the whole cabin opens up. There's so much light hitting this lava orange leather, and you can see now the difference between the matte carbon and the polished carbon fiber. And this has got to be one of the coolest. Look at that. Just different ball game. So these are called dihedral synchro helix doors because not only do they twist outwards, they also go upwards and articulate at the same time. So very trick piece of kit. Imagine how much time it took them to orchestrate all of those panels to open and close at the same time. Pretty incredible stuff. So yeah, going back to the features of the car, matte on the dashboard so that there's no reflection from the sun bouncing back and blinding you in the windscreen. Nice touch, but then contrasting on the outer edges is polished carbon, and this really is the biggest difference. Earlier, me trying to explain the difference between a polished and a matte. That's a matte, that's a polished, and it does have a sort of chrome film on it almost. It's an amazing finish. Now then, I want to just talk about transmission, because the eagle-eyed of you may have identified that this has flappy paddles connected to the steering column. And you might be thinking, hold on a minute, I thought it didn't have any gears. Well, you'd be right. So the plus paddle on the right here is only to initiate the car into forward drive. And then the minus here is to, you guess it, put it into neutral or reverse. You can force a jump in power using the Koenigsegg direct drive while you're driving to jump to its maximum power available at the given speed that you're in at that time, and sort of just propels you down the road like a slingshot. It's an incredible thing. Now then, this also has something called Creep EV mode, which allows you to start the car up in EV only and move forwards under pure electric power alone. You see, when this thing idles, it sounds more like a submarine than it does a car. The bass of it is unbelievable. It almost resonates the floor which it sits on. It's got so much energy, you could feel it actually from the outside of the car. So, if you just so happen to be starting up your Koenigsegg Regera early in the morning, maybe at a hotel or you have neighbors, you could put it into Creep EV, and as the name would suggest, creep out in silent electric mode. Quite cool. Now then, this may not seem like a big deal, but this has 2 cup holders. Now, there's not many hypercars which have any cup holders, and it's quite funny because when you talk to Christian about the Regera, he's really happy to tell you that it has 8 cup holders. And not only does it have 8 cup holders, they're also heated and cooled, which is pretty cool for a Hyper GT. Okay, so let's go through some controls because the way that you interact with Regera is really unique. All right, first thing to notice is that the visual representation of the car on the screen knows that the passenger side door is open and that we've now removed the roof. I think that's a really nice touch. Now, everything really to control the car takes place on this screen. So there's no physical buttons for things like moving seats. This is how you adjust the seat. Forwards, backwards, lifting it up, etc. Pretty cool. There's an easy exit button here, which is a default setting that when you exit the car, the seat will retract right the way back, meaning that you can use the car by getting in and out of it much easier. So what other controls do we have up here? We've got rear wing always up. That looks cool. You would definitely tick that, yes. Rear wing in low drag mode. It depends on how you're planning on driving this, but low drag mode ultimately helps you achieve that ultimate top speed. And this is where you open and close that charging port on the rear, which we showed you earlier. And then we have completely customizable interior. So right now we've got a standard sort of bluey tinted light, but you can change it to whatever shade you want. So I don't know, if your preference is red on this given day, you can change the ambience to red, for example. So it's quite cool, and it will change the trim in the cup holders and the little light between the seats. Performance, cool stuff here. This is basically the equivalent of traction control modes, and racetrack mode, pretty cool if you're going to break McLaren Senna lap times, which honestly has taken me by surprise, because when you drive this car, it's a very luxurious, effortless experience. For it to have just broken a Senna lap time is absolutely mind-blowing. I have actually had the privilege or sheer terror of driving this car in the wet, and it turns out that the traction control system is incredibly sophisticated, and it wasn't scary at all. Cuts in, depletes power, keeps you in check. Very helpful when you're in a car like this. Now then, cameras. Cameras are cool. We have a 360 camera here. If you're wondering why one half of it's closed, it's because the passenger door is open and the passenger wing mirror houses one of the camera to create the 360 effect. But otherwise, that gives you a top-down view of how you're positioning your car, which is pretty trick indeed. And you can specifically control which cameras you want to look at. So say you're parallel parking this up alongside a curb, you can point to your curbside camera and you can make sure that you're not going to curb your carbon fiber wheels, sir. Okay, check this out. If there was anything more reminiscent of Back to the Future, it's the words on this screen, which is basically the performance and temperature screen. So we've got words like hydrocoupe and inverters and max allowed power, which is judged by a combination of variables, mostly the numbers on that screen there, but it's also a mixture of available battery power, fuel availability. As you can see, we're not exactly topped up on fuel, but this just gives you a quick snapshot view of the overall performance and status of the important critical components of the car: battery, temperatures, internal combustion engine, etc. Very, very cool indeed. Now then, look how cool this is. At first, this just seems like a direction controller for the air vents, which is what it is. But if you look really closely behind these perforations, there's like a triple plate that articulates within inside the vents to discreetly channel the air in the direction you want it. You wouldn't see it at first, but as you look inside these holes here, you can see these plates moving. It's so trick. Okay, so there we have it. One hell of a Koenigsegg Regera. Now, it's up to you now. Questions, comments, feedback below. As I mentioned at the beginning, I wasn't even sure that I'd ever be able to share this car with you. I do believe, and I hope you agree, that it would be a crime not to share this beautiful creation with all of you petrol heads out there. So thanks to my partner for allowing me to twist his arm to get it on front of a camera for you. I don't know if I'll ever share a drive or not, but if I don't get to share a drive of this car with you, once again, there's a link below to when I did drive a Regera not so long ago. In depth, more walk and talk, even more detail on that crazy single direct drive gear setup and what it's like to be behind the wheel of one of these at full chat with a little bit of wet driving thrown in as well. Link below, go and check that out. But here it is. I don't know if we'll see it again. It's going into my partner's garage and he will be using it out and about, so I don't know if spotters might see it around the world at various times of the year. But once again, congratulations to him, and yeah, let's see where this journey takes us. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we shall see you next time. Ciao.